Welcome to Long Island Fed News with John Durso and Roger Clayman, a monthly podcast of the Long Island Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. I'm your host, John Durso, with our special guest today, former Labor Commissioner of Suffolk County, Sammy Chu. Sammy, welcome. So, Sammy, you've been a IBEW Local 3 apprentice, a journeyman, a political activist, as I said, the Commissioner of Labor in Suffolk County, the chairman of the Suffolk County Workforce Development Board, and now you own your own business. Tell us about your business and why you decided to start it.
I need to take a breath. It's pretty exhausting after you read it off like that. Yeah. But thanks for having me here. It's great to be with good friends. So, you know, when I was going to leave government, and I was determined to leave government, because I was somewhat of an accidental public official. And now, John, you've heard me say this many times, I'm a recovering public official. I never had aspirations to, be an elected official. I really got into government and politics in the first place as a trade unionist. So when I entered Local 3, I didn't have much of a political drive or even a political awareness. And it was my experience as an apprentice and then a journeyman in Local 3 that really gave me that experience, gave me that perspective. And in the 2004 presidential campaign, when John Kerry was running against George W. Bush, when we thought that George W. Bush was the worst that we could ever get, I was determined to help any way I could and decided that there was probably a better place for me to make phone calls to help in an election than going to Flushing, Queens with sheetrock dust in my hair after working in the city. And I came out to find a place in Babylon. I did an internet search. And that was my journey into public service, but it was accidental. You know, I never intended to go that path. And then, after Sandy, my last 2 years in government, I was really, tired. It was a really hard time. I was serving as both labor commissioner and as chief of staff, for the county executive, doing a lot of recovery. And I was just tired. I wasn't healthy. And I said, it's really time for me to go. I was working, my kids were young. I was working 7 days a week. And I knew it was time for me to do something new. And I went back to my roots. So in one way, where I, went in, I started, back in with my old partner, an electrical contracting business, and we're a Local 25 Caltech Electric. We're a Local 25 signatory. But I also wanted to, continue what I had worked on for a long time in Babylon, and even with the county in sustainability and combating climate change. And I started Edgewise Energy, really to develop interesting projects that could help us transition to a decarbonized energy space.
So, Sammy, this is a chance for us to talk about something we did together and to thank you for the help you gave us in meeting a vision we had about economic development in our communities. We had the idea. You came at it from maybe a different angle than I did, but we had experienced the concept of pre-apprenticeship as a way to bring young people from our communities, particularly our minority communities, into the construction trades, provide long-lasting careers, good wages, and good benefits, and help build wealth in those communities by the money that they received, the wages they had, the long-lasting careers that they were able to attain, and home ownership, which is really the essence, I think, of stable communities. So we worked together to build a pre-apprenticeship program here called Opportunities Long Island, and this was meeting a need to bring minorities into the construction trades and to form alliances with the communities who were, interestingly and ironically enough, economic development was really aimed at some of our minority communities on Long Island. So you had this dichotomy of rebuilding these gleaming new buildings and apartments into neighborhoods where people who lived there and may have worked on those couldn't afford to live there. And there's something wrong with that. There's also really a dark side to the whole idea of non-union construction in these communities, which is the idea of wage theft, the fact that employers would steal their money, that they're misclassified and taxes aren't paid, and there's cheating on prevailing wage, and just the horrendous safety record of people who work in that sector who can't speak up for their own rights to work on the job safely. So we started together a program, Opportunities Long Island, to bring in people from those communities. And we calculated that we were bringing a lot of money back to those communities. In fact, Huntington Station, just as an example, we've had 19 graduates from this program who were from Huntington Station. They started off as apprentices earning between $27 and $30 an hour with $36 an hour in a benefit package. And now the first graduate is making $57 an hour and $46 an hour in their benefit package as a journeyman. This is somebody who went through this program that you helped us start. And so if you add that all up, everybody from Huntington Station alone, we've brought about $5 million in investment back into that community, which makes it stronger. And Wyandanch, which you know a lot about, and helped do this there, we've had 10 graduates there. So like $2.5 million injected into that community just from this program. So I wanted to be able to thank you for that and just ask you, what apprenticeship meant to you, how you understood it so clearly because you went through it, and from your own experience, what apprenticeship meant to you.
So, the apprenticeship was really, and I say this as often as I can, and as often as I have an opportunity to do so. My apprenticeship with the IBEW and Local 3 was really the transformative experience of my life. And and you guys know me, and I've been very fortunate. I've experienced a lot of things. I'm on a lot of nonprofit boards. I've been a part of a lot of public initiatives, but to this day, my apprenticeship is really what helped structure, my life. How I got into the apprenticeship was like a lot of kids. I went to college. In fact, I left school early. I actually left high school after 11th grade. Like a lot of kids, I was in a rush to get out of school. I had good grades. I had good SAT scores, and I actually, was able to get in early admissions to Stony Brook. I was maybe academically ready for college, but I wasn't, from a maturity standpoint, I wasn't ready, and I ended up doing a couple semesters and then dropped out. I went to the classes I really liked. I did well in the classes I didn't like. I never went to. And so I dropped out, and I was kind of a little lost. I traveled the world. I lived in a kibbutz for 6 months. I backpacked around the Middle East for the rest of the time. And then when I came back, this was what we were talking about a little bit before the show. I came back. I ended up, that was my first entrepreneurial experience, was owning a couple of Mr. Softy trucks. That's how I met my wife. Her summer job was at the distributor. And the two most formative experiences of my life that really set me on a path is, meeting my wife and our marriage and my apprenticeship. And they're related. I always say my wife, every relationship needs a kite and a string, and that's my wife and I. I'm the kite, she's the string. If it wasn't for me, she wouldn't go anyplace. If it wasn't for her, I would fly away at any given moment. So when we started to get more serious, I realized, hey, I should really start thinking about, this is great. This is a great, business if you're, a single guy and, it's the lifestyle, you can have winters off. But I really wanted to go back to school and get on a course and get a career. And a family friend had said, hey, they're taking, for the first time in a long time, they're taking applications for the Local 3 apprentice. And this doesn't happen very often. And we had been coming off a recession. So what really captured me was the fact that through the Local 3 apprenticeship, you not only got employment and training, you also got a degree. It's one of the requirements, actually, of the Local 3 apprenticeship. And that's really what drew me. I said, wait, I can go, I can earn a living, I can get benefits, I could get retirement, and I could also get a college education, and they're going to pay for the whole thing. So I applied, and I ultimately got in, and one of the first crops of that class. And I tell you, from that point, that was really what set the course for my life up until this point. I learned you can't take shortcuts. It's structured. Whether you were, in the top of the class, you still had to do your time. You had to pay your dues. You had to get to work every day. There was no, there was no special exceptions. And I learned an enormous amount. The trade itself, as an electrician, there's still to this day, there's, limitless, things to pursue and niches to pursue and always more to learn. It's constantly evolving. So it gave me that. It gave me a structure. It gave me a trade that I could take with me at any time, any place. It applies even now in the work I'm doing. I'm working on some of the most cutting edge, clean energy projects, and, whether it's on the implementation development side or whether it's on the policy side. I learned that foundation, as an apprenticeship through the IBEW. And it also gave me a civic responsibility. So I think that, Local 3, and my experience as a union apprentice also gave me a foundation for understanding and valuing community. And it taught me that, and this is really, I'd be remiss if I, also didn't take an opportunity to mention, Harry Van Arsdale, who's a junior, who's a name that many, many more people should know. He was such an innovator. And, that's where I got the value that, a good union member, as a union member, I had a responsibility to make sure that I was taking care of my community. And conversely, I've still carried with me to this day that a good community knows how to take care of its union members and its workers. And that's a bond that when people don't manage it, when people don't pay attention to it, we end up with problems. We end up with people who are lost. We end up with people who are left out. And to get back to Opportunities Long Island, this is why Opportunities Long Island is so important, and why I'm so grateful that we had an opportunity to get it going, and how, Roger, you and Eric have been able to champion it, and John, because for a long time, and if we're being honest about Long Island, the New York City was way ahead of this. My apprenticeship class in New York City was very diverse. And we were together for 4+ years. And here on Long Island, was behind. And for a long time, unions were, father and son, and closed, like a lot of things. It's not to, this is how the world, worked, and in many ways still does work. In fact, more often than not, it still works that way in most contexts. But taking care of our community as union members is not taking care of some of the community. It's taking care of all the community. And that's why Opportunities Long Island is so important, because if the ability of unions, the ability of the union movement and the labor movement and just the broad worker movement to make sure that people, no matter where you're coming from, no matter what you look like, no matter how you grew up, that you have an opportunity for success, for a career, and to give, then in turn give back to your community. That's really the answer, right? This is how we create not only a stronger community, but a stronger country. So thus doing that work right here, and you just telling me those numbers, right? You said 5 million in Huntington Station, 2.5 million in Wyandanch. That's now, right? We're talking about those careers have years left to go, right? There's years of career. That's not jobs. That's not like, they're not going to be working. There'll be ups and downs, but think about how that's going to compound over time. And it's incredible.
It's so wonderful. First of all, Harry Van Arsdale, God rest them, and Chris Erickson, they should take this tape and utilize it for their apprenticeships. Okay, because I've had the pleasure of working with both of them over the years, and I know how proud they are of their apprenticeship, how proud they are of the program that they put forth, and hearing what you've said and how that's changed your life. And you're a tremendous example of what can be. And I know that they would be very, very proud And I'm hopeful that they will get a chance to hear this. And what you've done with Opportunities Long Island, what you and Roger and Jimmy Castellane and Dick O'Kane and now Maddie have been able to do with this, with Erica, is changing lives of people who for so many years were disadvantaged, people who were sort of in the shadows of our communities. And you've been able to reach out, this creation of yours, been able to reach out and bring these people out of the shadows and into the light of, a good economic lifestyle. And you didn't give them a job, you gave them careers, and you have this creation of yours has changed the lives of hundreds of people, and in turn that'll change hundreds of other lives. So it is a fabulous thing, and something that you should be immensely proud of.
And this is something, John, we want our community partners to understand, that union membership is vital to the development of their own communities. We've talked about many things with community partners over the years, but economic development is this area that's sort of stayed in the shadows itself. And it shouldn't, because union membership makes all the difference in whether there's going to be wealth generated. And now they can look to the building trades not as something that's foreign to them, that's just an all-white club. If you go through the membership ranks of our building trades on Long Island and New York City, you'll find that it is very diverse, very integrated, people from all kinds of backgrounds within the trade. So we're not looking at something that's so very different from those communities themselves.
I think what's wonderful about Opportunities Long Island, we're as a labor representative, right, John? You've negotiated more contracts than you could count, I'm sure. There are some employers you get along with. There are some you don't get along with. Sometimes it goes smoothly. Sometimes you have to fight every step of the way. And I've been part of negotiations too. But ultimately, whether it's a friendly relationship or an antagonistic relationship, you have to end with a contract. And what Opportunities Long Island represents is a contract between the unions and these communities. Because for years before that, people were working on, we're going to take care of it. We'll get you. We'll take care of you. We'll be good to you. Opportunities Long Island formalizes that, because unless they know and they can expect, just like your members do from a contract, you can't trust it, right? And you can't take it to the bank. So what Opportunities Long Island has done is given these communities the ability to know that if they're supporting unions, they can take the benefits to the bank, and the numbers are here, and that's great.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, this all goes into economic development, communities, strengthening our communities, strengthening our future. We know that economic development, how it creates jobs, whether directly or indirectly, and how it has established new downtowns and created tangible benefits for our community. Some of the things that we've really worked on is like the third track. The third track was something that has been talked about for years. And, under our current governor, it actually got done. I mean, I remember Roger and I talking with Chuck Fischillo for years about, the third track. When Chuck was in the Senate and chair of transportation, we would talk about that all the time. And now it's, not only is it a significant economic driver, but what it does for the development and what it's going to do for our future. And we've had a number of hub projects. We have the one in Suffolk. We go back to the Lighthouse Project with Charles Wong, and eventually that'll come to some variation of that will come to pass, and it'll be a boom for Long Island. But Sammy, just very quickly, what were some of your priorities when you were the labor commissioner?
Well, when I think this. It was the kind of the precursor, to Operations Long Island. And that was one of the first things, early on in the first year, prior to Sandy. After Sandy, everything kind of shifted. But certainly inclusion, diversity. I think also bringing back, serving to the sweet spot of Long Island. We have so much value here, but so much of it's disaggregated and not coordinated. And this is, really, it was very much, under the, in accordance with the vision of Steve, County Executive Blown, and of making sure that we can harness all the potential of Long Island, bring it together, and leverage that into opportunities for attracting businesses, growing businesses that were here. People talked about our manufacturing sector here, still as if it's something in the past. And the truth is, we still have many manufacturers here. Are we competitive in every bit of that sector? No, but when it comes to the more advanced, more technical work, it's in our DNA, right? We put, Long Island was instrumental. Man doesn't get to the moon without, I should say, humankind doesn't get to the moon without, Long Island's contributions. And that DNA is still here, and we need to continue to foster that. But diversity really was and making sure inclusion was really my focus and priority coming in. And also just, getting out into communities, right? We had, when I first got to the Labor Department, it's in a very institutional place. It's right next door, it's across from the Suffolk legislature and right next door to the Suffolk District Attorney's office. Not a really friendly, welcoming place to come. So, in the earliest days, we were able to, redistribute resources that are now still in place, under the current commissioner, who I will take the opportunity to say, Rosalie Drago, is the most qualified labor commissioner in Suffolk County's history.
She's fabulous.
She's terrific. And she's, we have satellites, in Wyandanch, Brentwood, and that's continuing, and they're building on that. And I think that still needs to be a priority.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break. This is Long Island Fed News with John Durso and Roger Clayman. Our special guest this section of our group has been Sammy Chu, former labor commissioner and all-around great guy. We'll be right back.
Congress has the chance to pass the most comprehensive labor law reform in decades, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act. The PRO Act will end years of anti-union policies, would empower workers to exercise the freedom to organize and bargain, repeal right-to-work laws, ensure that workers can reach a first contract quickly after a union is recognized. We need Congress to act now. Take action. Tell your members of Congress to support the PRO Act.
Finally, a super PAC dedicated to giving working people a seat at the table, UConnPAC.org. UConnPAC is a federally registered super PAC that gets behind causes and candidates that support expanding job opportunities through apprenticeships for all Americans, pay equity, livable wages, the right to organize, and repealing 14B, making right to work illegal in the United States. With clean money raised from regular working people, UConnPAC is changing the reputation of super PACs as a political organization that can serve the greater good. Learn more and donate today at UConnPAC.org. That's UConnPAC.org.
Welcome back to Long Island Fed News with John Durso and Roger Clayman, a monthly podcast of the Long Island Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. I'm your host, John Durso, with our special guest, former Labor Commissioner and entrepreneur, Sammy Chu.
Sammy, we're talking about economic development, and one of the controversial aspects of economic development is the use of public money to bring it about. And it's done on the local level by industrial development agencies, IDAs. That's just one of the ways that the state tries to keep business in the state, help it grow, bring companies into New York to keep them there. But often we have found that IDAs are making advantages available, tax advantages and grants and other kinds of tax issues available to companies that aren't really putting it back. So in a sense, we have companies that are coming into our communities, and they're what we would call extractive kinds of companies, in that they're drawing the money out and maybe perhaps sending the profits to their headquarters, and then they're hiring people from out of state to do the construction work. So sometimes the IDAs look upon the development of a piece of property as something that's long-lasting, and it'll be there, and it'll hire some people to work there. But there's a construction phase to this as well, where if we don't use local people, we don't create the opportunities that we just talked about for apprenticeship, for careers, and for advancement and wealth coming back into those communities. So we look upon IDAs as something that need to take a different view. And we've been working very hard with the Suffolk County IDA, and I think we're gonna get there, to have a Long Island first policy. Now, the way the IDAs work, they're controlled by state legislation, so you can't mandate that they keep this company, don't do anything for this company, but you can say, you can ask a question of that new employer or that developer and say, what are your intentions with respect to hiring people locally? And I know this is something that you had to get into when you were the labor commissioner, and you had to see it from both sides, because really when we think about the name, Industrial Development Agency, we think about bringing manufacturing into our community. These are companies that are going to stay here, long-lasting, create jobs. And so we see it one way, that, you know, we lost these jobs to an outside contractor for construction. On the other side of the table, they see it as, well, we brought these jobs into the community and we're bringing taxes onto the rolls that weren't there before. So how did you, when you were the labor commissioner, balance these kinds of conflicts?
So I would say I probably have the benefit of, you know, having worn as many hats as you possibly can in this equation, right? I was a union member. I've been on picket lines myself, as a member, as an apprentice and a journeyman, who saw a job that I didn't get, right, because it was being done by an out of state, you know, outfit. I was a policymaker. I'm a signatory contractor to, you know, Local 25 here, IBEW, who's a terrific partner to us and helping us, you know, make sure that we're competitive and we can get, you know, jobs done in a way that work for everybody. And I'm a developer, right? So on the development side, you know, it's a little different than the contracting side. On the contracting side, you work in a certain profit margin. On the developer side, you're now, you know, looking for the maximum return. So I understand that, you know, when people are looking at this on a pro forma or from an Excel spreadsheet, that, you know, whatever they can do, there's always going to be someone in an office that says, oh, well, if we do this, we can get a little better return on this. And, you know, capital expenditure savings have compounded returns over time. So I understand that perspective. But, you know, Roger, you hit the nail on the head, you know, that this is public investment, right? And that public investment, you know, requires a return. Now, we can't oversimplify this, right? It can't be oversimplified, because we do have an issue, because we're not in a bubble. And I saw it firsthand. We are competing against, you know, we saw, you know, I don't want to get into debate about the Amazon, you know, we could talk about that for a long time, whether Amazon could have come here, not come here. But essentially what that put on public display, and probably the most grand way historically, is that, you know, there's this competitive, you know, they pit regions against one another, right? So they'll say, hey, Long Island, if you can't figure it out, we're going to go to Virginia, we're going to go to Georgia, we're going to go in the Carolinas. And so that is a real concern we have to manage against, because we really are, in some cases, you know, in many cases, competing against that, these companies just not coming here. We know we do need economic development. But it all goes back to, you know, what I said before. If the community is not taking care of its union members, and it's not taking care of its own workers, it's not taking care of itself. You know, it's a road to self-defeat. And I think, you know, and I've been following the Michigas, you know, with the the IDA. I just had a IDA hearing myself, so I was brushing up, and I'm of course reading about it, and I'm also chair of the Suffolk Workforce Development Board, so I'm not entirely disconnected from what's happening now. But I actually think this conversation is good. We talked about our roles and opportunities Long Island before, Roger and I. John, before we even got to Opportunities Long Island, when Jimmy Castellane and I were having a disconnect on communication, John was the one who sent us both to our corners. I decided it was a good idea as a 35-year-old labor commissioner to pick a fight with the building trades. I was a little less polished, I would say, back then. And John said, calm down. He told Jimmy to calm down. And over time, through difficult conversations, we ultimately came to an understanding that has yielded wonderful results. So I don't necessarily, when I see these tough conversations going on, I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as a necessary part of progress. And as I share the confidence that you do, that you will get to a policy that works that works as best as it can within the constraints that state regulation allows for, and federal, there's federal constraints too. But at the end of the day, there has to be a shared understanding that if we don't take care of Long Islanders at every stage of this, then we're not headed down the right road. And, that doesn't mean that's an easy thing to do. And that requires compromise from everybody and participation from everybody. Unions, the, policymakers, the companies. But I'm confident that, that this road and with the people involved, that you're going to, get to something that is at least an improvement over what the current policy is.
Well, the IDAs are just such an important part of our community, and we're very fortunate that with you chairing the workforce, Roger being involved where we are, we have a voice on the Suffolk IDA that is speaking up on behalf of labor and the community. And there's, no matter what, I had a conversation last week with a person representing development. And they were saying, it's not tax dollars because nobody has a checkbook. It's about the future. I said, yes, it's about the future. It's about the future, but that is future tax dollars for the community that are going to come into the community. And if you don't take care of the community and don't take care of the people who live in the community, and don't take care of the people who work in the community, you're not benefiting the community. You're only benefiting the developer. Okay, and it has to be a combination. And look, you and Jimmy started off with a little bit of a bump. You worked it out. Suffolk County, there's been a couple of bumps. It'll work out. In Nassau County, the IDA under the chairman Richie Kessel, I saw him in action with Maddie and a developer on a project where he brought the two sides together that people can work together. And with conversation and with good intentions, you can meet and develop Long Island in a way that is beneficial to everybody. It's sort of like when you do a negotiation, you've done negotiations. Nobody walks away 100%, but everybody walks away happy to an extent. If one person is 100% happy, the other person isn't. There's got to be the give and take. I think we get that. I think that plays into the future for Long Island.
And there's sometimes people really just they don't put the amount of value that they should on convening power, right? When you look at an issue, you can get very academic about an issue, and I experienced this a lot. Over the years in government, and if you look at a policy two-dimensional, well, how does this work, and where does this come out, and how does this impact numbers? And I understand that, and that's important. Just like all the numbers matter, and the spreadsheets matter, and the returns matter. But I think government when it's at its best, it understands. And I think this is something that I'm proud of, that I was able to do in government, is exercise its convening power, right? Because one thing that government generally can do is at least get people in the room together. And I think that, even if you don't have certainty or an understanding of where it's going to end up, in fact, it's most powerful in those situations where you don't. Just making people get into the room together is, I think, one of the powerful things that government can do, that I think it should exercise as often as possible.
I absolutely agree. And, look, we all serve on various boards, and we serve with people we don't always necessarily agree with. But having those conversations, hearing what they're thinking, and trying to find some common ground for the future of the next generation, the future of our children and grandchildren, is what we are really is our mission, whether it be in the labor movement or in the nonprofit world or whatever, and that we all serve at various levels. And speaking about that, Sammy, how do you think we're preparing the next generation of our workforce?
Well, I'm starting to see, and I'm encouraged by it, that we're talking more holistically about future career paths in the last few years, and even the last couple of years. With an emphasis, a re-emphasis on things like apprenticeships, and a pathway. And by the way, it's not just pathways for entry-level workers anymore, or people making transition from student into worker. It's also now we have to consider, re-entry, right? And people who are coming in, as a re-entry, people who are coming back. Re-entry is commonly used for folks who have been incarcerated who are coming back into, finding gainful employment. But also there are a lot, people don't stay in careers for 40 years generally anymore. So we see a transition now where we need to account for workers that are transitioning careers, at multiple stages, at multiple points in their life. But I think putting an emphasis on a pathway is great, and I think that people are going to benefit from that. I had a conversation with, I'm having my kids are 16 and 14. My son, unsolicited, during the, one of the upsides of the quarantine is that I was home for dinner every night, which, you guys know that's not generally the life we live. We're, at the Crest Hollow 3 nights a week, not knocking it, but it was nice to be home for dinner, every night. And we had a lot of conversations, and he's getting to the age where, hey, Jake, what do you think? He says, well, I think I might, I think we might maybe be an electrician is, could be interesting. And I said, that's terrific, and this was never me pushing him. This is, to me, that's actually flattery. And it also means I must speak, pretty well of being an electrician. Right. And everything we've discussed today is things he's probably heard me say, hundreds of times over the years. And, I know a lot of electricians when I work with them. I would never bring my kid into this business. I would never do, I think it was great for me, and I think it could be great for him if it's the right thing. And I don't believe that we should be diminishing any particular career path, for anyone. And again, creating exposure to as many options as possible, I think is going to really benefit, the community as a whole, as I've been mentioning, today a lot.
It's funny because, as you know, I serve in the REDC, and one of the things that we're looking at is workforce. And this is what we talk about all the time, the three of us and so many other of our colleagues. But you see where the government and even schools are now realizing about the need for workforce development. You see where so many parents have, for generations. I mean, when I was growing up, everybody, you had to go to college. You had to go to college. Some kids took shop. Okay, and maybe they weren't going to go to college. They took shop, or they went to BOCES or anything. Now you see people are starting to look for that to happen more. Shop come back, BOCES come back, workforce back. We have seen because there is such a need for that, and great careers, great opportunities. I didn't go to college. I went 6 weeks. For college. That was it. I remember I went to Pace, and it was the year, and across the street from City Hall, and it was the year after there was a sort of a riot. A hard hats beat up the students. You can look about it in your history book, Sammy. Okay.
But let's just clarify, you weren't thrown out of college.
No, I
Okay.
I didn't. But I was offered a full-time job working for Wallbaum's, and that was more my speed. And it worked out. I managed to make a living. All right. But but it was it wasn't for me. And there's kids that it isn't right for, and they have the opportunity to go into the trades with things like Opportunity Long Island, like Helmets to Hard Hats, like Youth Build that works out of the United Way. These are things that people have opportunities, and opportunities for people who have been disadvantaged over the years. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And there's funding coming out of the federal government to help do this. It's one of the priorities of this new administration, to actually care about working people, not bullshit about caring about working people, but actually friggin' worrying about, I'm not supposed to curse, caring about working people, actually putting money into it, and getting money into the states. And we're fortunate here in New York because the majority leader is one of our guys. While Chuck Schumer was not a construction worker, there isn't a union leader or a construction worker who doesn't know that Chuck Schumer is out there fighting every day for all of us. We're very, very, very fortunate. That's a roundabout way to talk about the workforce and what we're talking about here today, climate jobs and things along those lines. But this is our future that we're talking about here. And Roger, let me turn to you about some of just our priorities that we're looking at.
Yeah, the politics in the country have begun to shift under this administration, and while Trump is in the rearview mirror,
thank God,
you don't hear his name mentioned every day. You don't hear him saying ignorant things on a daily basis. But it doesn't mean the politics doesn't linger. We have a lot of work to do with our own members to focus on the positive, on the things that we can achieve. And this administration under President Biden has brought 4 things in particular to the forefront. Our investments in infrastructure, addressing climate change, dealing with the widespread problem of immigration, finding a rational solution to that issue, and very importantly, addressing the question of inequality. And interestingly enough, the Republicans in Congress continue to weaponize each one of those concepts as if somehow it shows sloppy liberalism or special interests to think about America's future. And so, we have to keep that in mind and really talk about what are these. These are really expenditures that are made on behalf of America and on behalf of its working people in infrastructure and within the budget, investments in child care and early education, higher education, elder care, recurring cash payments to families with children. Why not? Why shouldn't we? What is wrong with that? Does it make people less responsible because we enable them to raise their children better? More generous subsidies through the American Cares Act, and to help people get by what is now becoming a boom, but not quite there for everybody. And substantial increases in Medicare and Medicaid, which are really could be changed to cover that area where people fall into the cracks and don't have health care. So those are things that are incredibly important. So, Sammy, I just wondered how you reacted from your experience to those kinds of investments.
So I think we're talking about two sides of a coin. You need both. Of course, the physical infrastructure. And we're talking about recovering from Trump and the lingering impacts. Unfortunately, and I think one of the things that enabled Trump, is that over time, our attention spans have just gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And the cycle for necessary political expediency has, outstripped, a reasonable, environment to actually get long-term strategic planning and effort, and endeavors done. And I'm really excited that, we have an administration that's looking to, overcome that. Even though that's really not going to go away anytime soon, but at least the administration is going to, work against the wind, so to speak, to get it done. Pardon the pun, because things like, investing in offshore wind, investing in, transition to a clean energy economy, investing in our roads and bridges and our physical infrastructure, that stuff is long overdue and necessary. But Roger, your point, and John, to your point, the social infrastructure is just as important. We tend to allow, labor, workers to be treated as a commodity, just as we would as lumber or firewood. People are not a commodity. We are infrastructure. Workers have value. Workers are not to be, that's us. If you treat the worker that way, that's how you're treating America, right? Because America's the people, right? So I think that's something that everyone can agree upon. So we're talking about workforce development, and that's the trade we've been working in for a long time. But if you can't make sure that an infant, from the time they're born till the time they get to kindergarten, has access to nutrition or childcare, they're going to lose a significant ability to succeed. And if you can't ensure that they're going to get a quality education and access to nutrition and healthcare along that road, by the time they're ready to enter the workforce or of workforce age, they may have missed, key opportunities in development. And these are things that I think should be non-negotiable. We understand that we have to fill potholes in roads, but we still can't wrap our heads around that children shouldn't be hungry in this country. We understand that we can't have a crumbling bridge, but we can't understand that there shouldn't be lapses in the ability for a child to go someplace safe during the day to help make sure their single parent can work. We can't wrap our heads around that when someone is sick, they need access to healthcare. Why? It still boggles my mind that we can't collectively wrap our heads around that these are things that should be non-negotiable. And not just non-negotiable, which they should be non-negotiable just because this is the right thing to do, but because that's an investment. That's our social infrastructure. That's the value of America. You talk about immigration. Up until the Trump administration, with few exceptions, every brilliant, talented person in the world, I should say every, but many, across the world, wanted to come here. We had a system, we had built a reputation as the United States of America that people from all over the world who were educated and talented, or who came here to get educated but then want to work here and stay here and invest here and build their life here. And within just the last few years, we have damaged that, and it'll take a long time to reverse. We had students that would come from places like India, come here to school knowing that they could come to school here and then work here and invest in their life into being an American. And somehow we were devalued that. And this social infrastructure, until we're not going to reach where our full potential until we fully understand the importance of social infrastructure.
I think you've hit it right on the head. Here on Long Island, people look at Long Island as, everybody's wealthy on Long Island, and yet we have some of the worst pockets of poverty of any place, not only in this state, but in this country. All right. There are thousands of children who go to bed hungry on Long Island. There are thousands of children who don't have a nutritious meal over the weekend because they're not in school here on Long Island. The fact that that they don't have access to broadband when this past year they've been working from home. The fact that it is an acknowledged fact that children who have pre-K education and full-time kindergarten do better. This is, as you say, infrastructure, social infrastructure. It only adds to, if people want to look at the bottom line, this is an investment in your bottom line. Regardless of the fact that it is the right thing to do, it is the moral thing to do, it is what you're taught from day one to treat people properly. Look at it. You want to look at it in numbers? Look at it in numbers. This is an investment in the future of this region, of this state, of this country. We're not doing it, you don't want to do it because it's the right thing to do it. Do it because it's a smart, economical thing to do. Put money into childcare, put money into pre-K education, put money into food, and I could go on for the next 3 hours. But I tell you, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, and I'll turn it to you, Raj. You mentioned about recently incarcerated, okay, people getting back into the workforce. Errol Toulon, the sheriff of Suffolk County, is brilliant.
Great guy.
Absolutely brilliant. We should clone him, for God's sakes, and his team, because what they've done for the recently incarcerated, training and things of those sorts, that's investment in the future. Roger, let me turn to you for a few closing remarks.
Our discussion only really directs us to think about the future and the opportunities that are in front of us. We have a whole new world opening up, a brand new industry, renewable kinds of industries that Sammy's been working in, but the offshore wind industry will present challenges for our workforce and for manufacturing on Long Island. And that's a topic in and of itself, how we organize ourselves in the labor movement, the future generation of workers, and established manufacturers on Long Island to think about this as something where they can move forward and be a part of, just as the defense industry came to Long Island and reshaped the workforce and our communities. This will do the same, and we need to be a part of it.
And you and Sammy have been working together on that, and you working with others, leading the charge here on Long Island. Sammy, I hope you will come back. This has been a great conversation. I'm looking forward to you joining us again. This has been the Long Island Fed News with John Durso and Roger Clayman, a monthly podcast of the Long Island Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. I'm your host, John Durso. Thank you very much.